Hello, I'm Christian Wellard, Curatorial Assistant here at the Royal Armouries in Leeds. I have a beautiful pair of early revolvers, and this is up in arms. So today with me I have a beautiful pair of early percussion revolvers. Today we're all too familiar with Samuel Colt's designs and the various revolving pistols that came as a result of that. Most modern revolvers can trace their lineage all the way back to Colt's early designs in the 1840s. These slightly predate that, they're from about 1835, and as a pre-Colt design they share a number of features with other early revolvers of those time periods. So as well as being technologically interesting, they're also gorgeously decorated. They've got these beautiful ornate wooden stocks, all of walnut, with as well ebony banding around the butt caps here, which is very nicely figured. Now, being percussion revolvers and pre-Colt, they don't actually index the cylinder after every shot, so if I cock the hammer, nothing moves. Instead, I have to do that all myself manually. So I pull back the cylinder, rotate it one space, it goes forward, creating a gas seal, so it is spring loaded, and you're ready for another shot. But another interesting facet of this is it's not actually a standard percussion cap system, rather it actually uses the tube lock system. So on this, we've got a number of clips, one for each hole and one for each chamber in the cylinder. And so into this you will place a clip or a copper or brass tube, and that tube contains the impact sensitive compound, that fulminate, that would normally be in the top hat shaped percussion cap. And so one of those goes into each of here, and then we can see the shape of the hammer is somewhat unusual. That is shaped so that it does get the maximum effect out of those tubes in there. So when it comes down, it will crush it effectively. As well as being technically interesting then, we've got other elements of the decoration that are absolutely gorgeous with these. The barrels are swamped, meaning that they flare ever so gradually towards the muzzle. They've also got some very fine sights here, including this very fine blade, which is also a bead shape, which does look quite nice. But of course, there is also the deep engraving all over the metalwork here. So the flats of the cylinders, the front plate here, along just the top rib of the barrel, as well as on the side flats, and also on and around the action here. Now this decoration is not just on the pistols as well. As we can see, it is a cased set, and we've got some other elements here as well. So we have a bullet mold with an integral sprue cutter, decorated in a similar fashion, and also the powder flask with this nice cherub engraved on one side, and then on the other we have this monogram. So the monogram, which is also on the pistols, is F2. So we see it here on top of the action on the pistols. And that links us to the owner of these pistols, as we understand it. So F2 being Ferdinand II, King of the Two Sicilies, who was king of that kingdom from 1830. So at this time, Italy, of course, was not yet unified. That would come about 35-40 years after this, after these pistols were made. So at that point, Sicily and Naples are under one unified kingdom, the kingdom of the Two Sicilies. And so Ferdinand at this time was their ruler. And we've also got, on continuing the Sicilian theme, on the trigger guard here, we also have an eagle engraved as well, which is a heraldic symbol relating to Sicily. And it's understandable that it would be a royal provenance with these pistols. They are very technologically interesting from the time, and also so gorgeously engraved. Another interesting facet as well is the barrels are not only rifled, but they also have a very, very nice design of ratchet rifling, which really comes out starkly when you shine a light down here. Now, of course, this is some fine craftsmanship, and so we need to pay due reference to the manufacturers of these pistols, and this was none other than the family Lepage of Paris. This is one of the 19th century's finest gun-making families in France, and the family claimed through several generations the title of arquebusier du roi, or gunmaker to the king, both before the French Revolution, and also many pistols and other weapons were provided to to Napoleon and his family from the Lepage family. And at this point, it would have been run by Henri Lepage, making these, again, continuing that royal connection, but this time doing it for customers abroad as well as those at home. So in terms of what these would be used for, primarily decorative purposes. This is not necessarily the sort of thing that if a king did own them, they would go out and use. They might use something a bit more mundane, but nonetheless, this very much has the air of a target pistol around it. First, of course, that ratchet rifling mentioned earlier, but also we have a spur on the underside of the trigger guard here, and so that, when held, gives a very, very positive vertical, almost vertical grip, and as a result, in the hand, it points very naturally onto a target, which in combination with these very fine sights does suggest that it would be used for a target shooting environment. So as I mentioned, this doesn't fit in alongside those Colt revolvers, which came ever so slightly later, and that was where Colt managed to make the connection between having a hand in the back of a cylinder, which is acted upon when you do the cocking action, which automatically rotates the cylinder one space. On this, that simply isn't possible. So being an early muzzle loading revolver, you need to load it from the front, and it actually has a plate here which you need to first remove. It's held in place by this spring here. So depress that, pull the plate forwards, and that gives you access to the chambers. And so you can then load them in here, put your powder charge in, put your bullet in and a wad, and then they are nicely retained when you put this plate back into place. And then, as mentioned before, for firing, you would bring to the half cock, place a tube into here, and then when you're ready to go, full cock and fire. So being a tube lock, this doesn't use the traditional top hat shaped percussion cap. Instead, and we have a few here, it uses copper or brass tubes which will contain the fulminate compound instead of that top hat shape. And so on these, we have one position with a clip for each cylinder or each chamber. And so the tube simply slots in like so. And so when the hammer comes down, it can smack it, and the detonation is funneled through a touch hole and into the chamber to set off the round. So that's ultimately one of the reasons why this was arguably a technological dead end. This was not just an isolated case of using these tube locks. In fact, the Austrian army used a musket with a tube lock system around the same time period as this, the Augustin musket. But ultimately, it's a bit fiddly to work with, especially when you've got to fit one to each of these. It's a bit more of a gross motor movement fitting a top hat shaped cap to a nipple than it is fiddling around with one of these little tubes. On top of that as well, with that pulling rearwards action of revolving the cylinder, that's also adding complicated elements into it, which Colt's revolvers really just did away with. They didn't need this extra seal around the breech, and instead they just used a hand, which when the cock would be cocked, or when the hammer would be cocked, it would just rotate the cylinder and leave that empty, leave that open seal there, and then gases would just come out. But this is one of the reasons why I chose these pistols. They are an interesting little element of, technologically speaking, of the 1830s, of a system that isn't actually as well known as the alternatives, even though it didn't really end up going anywhere. But also that, combined with the really interesting royal connection, and of course the gorgeous decoration and the connection to the renowned Lepage family of Paris, it really is a gorgeous set of pistols here. And having lived in the store for many years, it was time to bring them out and show them to you. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you found that interesting. We are, of course, the Royal Armouries. We have our museums open to the public at Leeds, at the Tower of London, and down at Fort Nelson near Portsmouth. Of course, as well, we are a charity, so if there's any way you feel like you can help, whether it's through giving time or donation, check the box below. There'll be information there for you there. We appreciate everything. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all that good stuff. It does help out, and also it means you'll see more of these videos when they come out. Thanks for watching.